Thank you to one of our viewers, Ryan, for sharing this spine-chilling experience with us. Ryan, who lives in Boston, recounted an incident that happened to him and his friends during the fall of 2020 when pandemic restrictions had just eased. Ryan and 4 of his friends decided to take a break from the monotony of lockdown and planned a road trip to a remote cottage owned by the uncle of his friend Nick. The cottage was in a secluded area near the small town of Riverside, Oregon, surrounded by dense woods and breathtaking views. None of them had ever been there before, but Nick had often spoken about how serene and private the location was. The group packed their car with snacks, drinks, and essentials before hitting the road. After a long drive, they finally reached the cottage by midday. It was a beautiful, one-story house nestled deep in the woods, with no other homes or cabins in sight. The isolation was perfect for a getaway, or so they thought. Nick unlocked the cottage, and the group began exploring. The 2 friends who had driven, Luke and Chris, were exhausted and went to sleep as soon as they arrived. Meanwhile, Ryan, Nick, and another friend, Sean, decided to explore the area. Behind the cottage, they discovered a small, clear creek running through the lush greenery. Unable to resist, they jumped into the water to cool off. Ryan and Sean stayed close to the bank, but Nick, the adventurous one, wandered further downstream. Moments later, Nick yelled, "Hey, guys, check this out." When Ryan and Sean looked over, they saw Nick holding an old clay urn. When they peered inside, their blood ran cold. It contained ashes, and it looked eerily like cremated remains. Alarmed, Ryan told Nick to leave it, but Nick laughed it off and tossed the urn into the water. As they headed back to the cottage, something strange caught Ryan's attention. Near their car, he found a small clump of hair that looked freshly torn, with what appeared to be blood on it. Disturbed, he showed it to the others, and Nick took a photo on his phone, joking about how they'd investigate later. They brushed it off as a weird coincidence and returned to the cottage. Later that evening, Ryan, Nick, and Sean went into town to buy some supplies for a barbecue while Luke and Chris stayed behind to rest. The trip took longer than expected, but the small town had a quaint charm that distracted them. When they finally returned, they set up a grill on the rooftop patio. The group enjoyed their food, drinks, and the serene sounds of the woods. At some point, a couple of friends began tossing leftover chicken bones into the woods behind the cottage, thinking nothing of it. That's when it started. Out of nowhere, they heard a loud, chilling voice from the darkness. "I'm hungry. Feed me." The friends froze, exchanging uneasy glances. At first, they thought someone among them was playing a prank. But as the seconds passed, the gravity of the voice's intensity sunk in. It wasn't one of them. Trying to dismiss the unease, they continued the evening. Later, Ryan stepped away to the back of the cottage for a cigarette. In the dim moonlight, he thought he saw a woman in a white dress walking slowly toward him from the woods. Startled, he blinked, and she was gone. Shaken, he told his friends, but they dismissed it, blaming it on the alcohol. As the night deepened, strange things escalated. Ryan noticed his DSLR camera case, which had been wet earlier from their creek adventure, was missing. He remembered leaving it on the water tank on the roof. When he went to retrieve it, the large tank suddenly began to shake violently as if someone, or something, was trying to push it over. Ryan grabbed his camera and ran back inside, warning everyone that they needed to leave. But before they could act, Nick and Sean, who had gone to the car to fetch a hookah, came running back, pale and trembling. "There's a woman outside," Nick stammered. "She's wearing black, with long, wild hair, and she's smiling at us. It's not a normal smile. It's like she's daring us to come closer." The group was terrified now. Gathering their belongings in a panic, they made a run for the car. As they drove away, they saw her again, standing near the porch. Her eerie smile followed them, and it felt like her piercing eyes were fixed on their very souls. But the horror didn't end there. As they sped down the winding road, they felt an inexplicable heaviness, as though something was chasing their car. One of them swore they could see a shadowy figure running alongside them in the dark. By the time they reached the outskirts of Riverside, Ryan fainted from fear. He woke up at a roadside diner, surrounded by his worried friends and a few locals. A group of elderly patrons, including a local priest, listened intently as the friends recounted their harrowing ordeal. The priest explained that the cottage was infamous in the area. It was built over an old burial ground, and several mysterious deaths had occurred near the creek. The urn they found likely belonged to someone whose spirit had never found peace. The priest warned them that taking the photo of the hair was a grave mistake. Spirits tied to such remains often become attached to those who disturb them. The group immediately deleted the photo. The priest also provided protective charms, urging them to stay away from such places in the future. Ryan concluded his story by saying that for weeks after the incident, he and his friends experienced vivid nightmares of the woman and the cottage. It wasn't until they sought further spiritual guidance that the haunting finally stopped. Moral of the story: always be cautious when exploring remote locations. Some places are best left undisturbed, and a single mistake can have life-altering consequences.